Welcome to week 13 and the module 13 of our project management professional training program. I'm so excited. This is going to be the last week and the last module of our professional training program. All right, it's going to be the last module for our lectures and the last week in the training program. After this week, the next week is going to be preparation, right? We're going to have the preparatory session for the professional certification exam. Okay, so without further ado, this week and in this module, we're going to be discussing the project stakeholder management. Project stakeholder management. This is also a very critical area in our project management process, because without stakeholders, you cannot have effective project execution. As a matter of fact, without stakeholders, you cannot even do anything as a project manager. All right. At the start of the course, we talked about stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? All right. These are individuals and institutions who, in one way or the other, are involved in the project and whose involvement have some form of influence in the outcome of the project, whether positive or negative. All right, so in this model, we're going to be looking critically at the stakeholders in detail, how you as a project manager can identify who your stakeholders are, how you can plan to work with them, how you can engage them during the life cycle of the project, and also be able to monitor what they're doing. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the details of project stakeholder management. Come with me. The introduction to project stakeholder management. Now, for an overview, the project stakeholder management involves identifying, analyzing, and engaging stakeholders throughout the project lifecycle to ensure their needs and expectations are understood and addressed. Now, like I said, the stakeholders are individuals. All right, they could be individuals, they could be organizations, they could be institutions, whether private or public, who are involved in the projects that you're carrying out. Right, they have an involvement. Okay, and because they're involved in the projects, they have influence over the project. They can make decisions about the project. All right, they can suggest changes, all right, to some aspects of the project. Okay, and they have some form of influence over the project process itself, as well as the outcome ultimately. All right, so because of this involvement and influence that they have, it is important for you as a project manager to be able to identify who are these people that have influence over the project. All right, and how will I be able to manage their influence so that it doesn't adversely affect the project and skew the direction and objective of the project. All right, so that is why this model is very critical. All right, these stakeholders are going to be involved in the project throughout its life cycle. Okay, so it's not just a one-time thing. They're going to be there throughout the life cycle of the project. And these stakeholders could be customers, they could be regulatory agencies, they could be people within the project organization itself, okay, and even the project team members are also stakeholders. All right, subject matter experts are stakeholders. Okay, so this is very important. So you're going to have to identify, analyze, and engage the stakeholders in order to ensure that whatever needs that they have, whatever concerns they have, whatever expectations they have, all right, for and in this project are understood by you as a project manager, all right, and then also as a project team if we're looking at external and internal stakeholders, and then so that those expectations can be properly addressed. Okay, it encompasses strategies for effective communication. All right, so you have to learn how to communicate with the stakeholders, all right, collaboration, and also managing the relationship with each of the stakeholders, all right, in order to maximize your project success. Okay, so you have to, after identifying who the stakeholders are, you have to know how you can communicate with them. What is the best form of communication? What are the best channels to use so you could reach them, and also that they could be understood by you and you can also understand them, all right? Then also how to collaborate with them and foster a good relationship with them. So this is in a nutshell what project stakeholder management is really all about. All right, so let's move on. Now, what are the objectives of project stakeholder management? Firstly, identify stakeholders. Okay, you have to identify who the stakeholders are individually. So you have to recognize those individuals, groups, or organizations who may be impacted by or have an impact on the project. So it's either they are impacting the project and the project is impacting them. So it's a two-way street here. Okay, so first is identification, identifying who they are, their level of involvement, their level of influence, and or authority over the project. So next is analyze stakeholders. So you've got to assess the stakeholders' interests. What are their interests on your project? What are their expectations? What influence do they have? All right, and what potential impacts do they have on the project? All right, so that's the second objective, to analyze the stakeholders' interests, expectations, influence, and potential impacts on the project. So thirdly, engage the stakeholders. All right, you have to engage the stakeholders. So as a project manager, you have to develop strategies to involve stakeholders in project activities. All right, you have to be able to communicate with them effectively and manage their concerns and expectations. Okay, so this is very, very important. You have to be tactful, you have to be strategic about how the stakeholders are involved in the project, and that has a lot to do with communication. So you need to learn how to communicate with them effectively and ensure that their concerns and expectations are managed properly. Okay, so last but not the least, manage stakeholder relationships. Okay, so this has to do with building and maintaining positive relationships with your stakeholders to gain their support, address any form of conflicts that may arise, and then mitigate risks. Okay, so you have to understand these objectives when you're doing project stakeholder management. Firstly, you have to identify who the stakeholders are. You have to analyze them, their level of interest, their expectations, their influence or potential impact. You have to engage them effectively through proper communication, and then also you have to manage those relationships and ensure that you have their support, all right, throughout the project, and be able to quickly address any conflict before it aggravates to uncomfortable levels. Okay, so those are the objectives when it comes to project stakeholder management. Alright, so let's look at key concepts in this knowledge area. What are the key concepts that you should be concerned about as a project manager? Okay. So firstly, you have stakeholder identification. Now this is the process of identifying all individuals, groups, or organizations that may be affected by or have impact on the project. All right, so firstly, identification is a key concept in project stakeholder management. Stakeholders can include sponsors, right? It's sponsors of the project, those who are funding the project. That's what that means. All right, can include customers, right? Those who are going to be using the outcome or the products from this project. Okay, they could also be team members, all right, members of your project team. They could be suppliers. All right, last time we looked at project procurement management, right, where you have the contracting firm who are handling the supplies of raw materials or equipment for your project. So they are also stakeholders. They could also be regulatory bodies or agencies. All right, agencies of government, right, private firms. Okay, for example, you could have the standard organization or the standard agency responsible for standardization and quality assurance. All right, so those are regulatory agencies, and they are stakeholders. Okay, they will be involved in your project one way or the other. And then also the general public. The general public, especially those within the location of your project execution. All right, those who could be impacted, all right, by the execution process. Let's say, for example, you're handling a road construction. So those who are in that area where the road passes across, they are stakeholders. All right, they will be impacted by the construction project, the activities going on in that area. They will be impacted. All right, you're setting up let's say software, right, in an organization. The employees, those who are going to be using the software, they are stakeholders, right? These are customers. So we have different types of stakeholders depending on the project you're working on. So you need to be able to identify them. All right, then you can now begin to learn their expectations, their requirements, and their the authority that they have over the outcome of the project. So second key concept is stakeholder analysis. After you have identified them, you have to be able to assess their interests, their expectations, their influence, and potential impact on the project. This analysis helps you as a project manager to prioritize the stakeholders. Okay, so you can now prioritize who to pay more attention to, all right, and those you may not really bother with that much, right, because they don't have much influence, okay, or a significant influence, or influence that is impactful on the project. All right, so it also helps you to tailor your communication strategies, because a major part of managing your stakeholders is about communication, effective communication, and you have to be strategic in that. All right, so when you analyze them and understand the stakeholders, then you can now tailor and modify your communication strategy, all right, in such a way that it's directed appropriately, all right, to the appropriate stakeholders, and it can have the intended impact on them. All right, And then also this analysis helps you to anticipate their needs and their concerns. Okay. Thirdly, stakeholder engagement. Now, after you've identified the stakeholders, you've analyzed their level of involvement, you need to be able to engage them. All right. So this has to do with strategies and activities aimed at involving stakeholders in project activities, seeking their input and keeping them informed about project progress and decisions. All right. So you have to be able to engage them, especially if they are playing a very vital role, all right, in the project execution phase. Okay, so you have to be able to engage them and ensure that they are playing the role that they are meant to play, all right, and you're getting the feedback they're supposed to get from them. Okay, so this will help to ensure that your project doesn't stagnate. Okay. And then of course it helps you to also make proper decisions. Effective stakeholder engagement fosters collaboration, builds trusts, and enhances project outcomes. So that collaboration has to be there throughout the life cycle of the project. So next is communication management. Like I said, major part of project stakeholder management has to do with effective communication. Okay, so this involves developing and implementing communication plans to ensure timely and relevant information is shared with stakeholders. All right, so communicating with them, sharing information with them, you have to ensure that the information is relevant to each individual stakeholder, all right, and also it is reaching them at the appropriate time. Okay, also communication channels, formats, and frequency are customized based on stakeholder preferences and requirements. Okay, so you have to understand the preference of each stakeholder when it comes to their communication channels. All right, what medium are you going to use to communicate with which stakeholder? All right, so you have to understand, is it going to be by mail, is it going to be by some conference, a call, is it going to be by direct phone call, by text message, by WhatsApp? All right, so what form of channel, or is it even going to be face-to-face communication? All right, you have a face-to-face meeting or discussion with the stakeholder, so you have to learn, and you have to learn their preferred communication channel or format, and then be able to use that effectively, because it might not really be one size fits all. Okay, you cannot use one strategy for every stakeholder, because it may not really work for everyone. Okay, so you have to identify what channels and formats that is relevant to each stakeholder. All right, the number 5 key concept is conflict management. Now, addressing conflict and resolving dispute among stakeholders to maintain project momentum and achieve consensus is very important. Okay, so of course, as you engage the stakeholders, as they are involved in the project, and the project is going on, you may find some conflicts at one point or the other, especially when it comes to decision making. All right, and what each person thinks should work best. Conflicts may arise, especially with the stakeholders and among the team members. So as a project manager, you have to be good at conflict management, to be able to resolve this conflict quickly and timely, so that they don't aggravate and by so affect the project adversely. All right, you have to ensure that everyone is on the same page, and collaborating effectively. Conflict resolution techniques include negotiation, mediation, and escalation procedures outlined in the project's governance framework. All right, so you have to have these techniques, all right, in your kitting. You have to have them handy, okay, to be able to resolve conflicts when they arise. All right, let's move on. Six key concepts: stakeholder relationship management. Now this has to do with building and maintaining positive relationships with stakeholders by understanding their needs, providing value to them, and addressing their concerns. Now this is very, very important. You have to know what are their needs, all right, as far as this project is concerned. How do you provide value to them, okay, and how do you address their concerns as stakeholders? Strong stakeholder relationships enhance project support, reduce resistance to change, and increase overall project success. Okay, so most of the times you are going to want to have to make changes to the project, all right, or some aspects of the project. And if you don't have good relationship management with your stakeholders, they could kick against some of those changes you want to make, all right, especially if everyone is not on the same page. So relationship management is very, very vital in order to have them at your side, okay, and gain their support, especially when project changes need to be made. Okay, this definitely increases the success rates of the project overall. All right, so what's the importance of project stakeholder management? Firstly, effective stakeholder management is crucial for project success as it helps to identify and mitigate risks associated with stakeholder expectations and concerns. All right, so of course we've talked about risk during the project risk management. So when it comes to working with stakeholders, that could also present itself as some risks. All right, so if you have effective stakeholder management in place, it will help you to be able to mitigate those risks associated with stakeholder expectations and concerns. All right. Secondly, ensure alignment between project objective and stakeholder needs. So there has to be proper alignment with the objective of the project and the needs of the stakeholder. The stakeholder may be gunning for something that is outside alright, of the project objective. They may be aiming for something that is not really within the scope of the project. Okay, so you should be able to manage that, and then communicate effectively how this is not in line with what you're trying to achieve in this project. All right, because sometimes they may not have all the information. They are not as knowledgeable about the project or its outcome as you are, especially when these stakeholders are the clients. Every client wants the best outcome, as in now. All right, so their timing or their time perspective may be unrealistic. Maybe this is a project that was supposed to run for a year, all right, and the client is looking at it being completed within 3 months. It may not be realistic, so you have to be able to communicate effectively. And also, when it comes to the outcome of the product of the project, probably the specifications that the client is looking at may not really be feasible. Okay, you're doing a software development, or you're trying to create a website, or maybe a product. Okay, the clients may want this feature and that feature and that feature. Everything modeled into one. So as the project manager and as someone who's more knowledgeable about the project, so it's in your place to educate the stakeholder and say, hey, this may not work like this. Okay, this is what the project objective is. I think let's keep it that way. All right, so that's why I say with proper communication, you should be able to manage those relationships and ensure alignment with the stakeholder needs and the project objective. Okay. And thirdly, build support and secure resources from key stakeholders. Now, like I said before, some of the stakeholders could be sponsors, all right, those funding the project. So when you have proper relationship management with your stakeholder, all right, you should be able to get their support, especially when it comes to needing more resources, okay, from them. So that could come handy. Stakeholder management will also help to minimize resistance to project changes and facilitate acceptance. Whenever you request for changes to a project, it has to go through a process, right? Yeah, it has to go through a process of analysis, and then finally, if it's approved and accepted by the stakeholders, then you can go ahead and begin to effect those changes. All right, but if you don't have good stakeholder management, it will kind of hinder acceptance. All right, to hinder acceptability for your suggested changes or your change requests. So proper stakeholder management helps to facilitate that acceptance. 5. Enhance project credibility and reputation by demonstrating responsiveness to stakeholder feedback. Alright, so when you are responsive, when you demonstrate that you're responsive to their feedback, it helps to enhance credibility of your project and your reputation as well. So understanding these key concepts and objectives enable project managers to implement stakeholder management strategies that foster collaboration, manage expectations, and drive project success. Okay, so by now you've gotten a whole overview and a heads up on who stakeholders are and how to be able to identify them, how to analyze them, how to engage them, and how to manage them throughout the life cycle of your project in order to be able to understand them, their concerns, their preferences, their needs, the right strategies and the right channels to be able to communicate with them effectively, and also have their support, right, and trust throughout the life cycle of your project. This is very, very important if you want to have a smooth sail throughout the life cycle of your project. Okay, all right, so what are the project stakeholder management processes that we'll be going through in this model? Firstly, identify stakeholders. Number 2, plan stakeholder engagement. Number 3, process, manage stakeholder engagement. Fourthly, monitor stakeholder engagement. Okay, so these are the processes that are involved in the project stakeholder knowledge area. We're going to be looking at them one after the other in different sections. Okay, so that's it for this introductory aspect of this knowledge area. I'm gonna see you in the next section in the next class. Cheers, bye for now.